Hey guys, my name is Ker-Leen and this is the first vlog that's going to go up on this channel. This channel is going to document my history with an incompetent cervix, getting the TAC, which is the transabdominal cerclage, and my current pregnancy. In this first video, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of history. By now you probably have seen my announcement video. I thought it was important to go back and let you guys know kind of how everything started. I had recorded everything from the beginning of this pregnancy up until now, and I lost a whole bunch of footage. I lost everything from when we found out we were pregnant, so showing the actual pregnancy test up to like 9 weeks. So we lost everything from the beginning up until 9 weeks, and so the only vlog footage that you guys are going to see after today's video is everything from like 10 weeks on. So I'm thankful that I was able to salvage something. There was a lot of footage that I took when I was getting the TAC procedure that I don't have, but hopefully I will be able to give you guys a sense of what I went through, especially for you moms out there who are struggling with an incompetent cervix, considering getting the transabdominal cerclage versus the transvaginal. Hopefully I'll be able to kind of capture everything pretty well for you guys. I'll start with my pregnancy history. In 2012, so June 2012, my hubby and we found out we were pregnant. It was our first pregnancy, so we immediately, I think we just let a few days go by, and then we immediately called all of our family members, and we were like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. Everybody was happy, and we were happy, and it was just a really joyful time in our lives. But probably a week after I started bleeding, so on June 17, 2012, I was bleeding. I was really concerned about it, so hubby and we went to the emergency room, and they said that might be what's happening, to keep an eye on it. They really didn't do much for us. There's nothing they can do at that point in time, so they sent us back home, and I continued to bleed. And then on the 19th, I was cramping, and the bleeding got a little bit heavier. So we went to the emergency room again. Before going to the emergency room, I had passed something when I used the bathroom that was kind of tissue-like, and I saved it. I kind of wrapped it up, and we went to the emergency room, and the doctor confirmed that that's what was happening. I was having a miscarriage, and she said that that's most likely what the tissue was. So they prescribed me some pain medication, and at the time we had called our family and told them, and everybody was praying for us, and we eventually ended up losing that baby at 6 weeks. So I was not very far along. I suffered a 6-week miscarriage, which is very common. People don't talk about miscarriage. I mean, I'm so thankful for YouTube and all the women who come on here and blogs, and all the women who are fearless and bold and really post their stories to help other people, because I feel like it's such a taboo topic even now. I grew up in a Haitian household, and in the Haitian community, people don't talk about things like this, and no one in my family has ever gone through this except for my grandma. My mom told me my grandma had multiple miscarriages during her reproductive years. So yeah, I had never known anyone. I didn't have any friends who had miscarriages. I didn't know anyone who had gone through something like that. So it was a big shock to me, because I never imagined I would be in that situation. So fast forward to 2014. In April 2014, we found out we were pregnant again. So my period didn't come. We took a pregnancy test. We were pregnant. We were overjoyed. It had been 2 years. We weren't preventing it. We were trying to have a baby, and it just was not happening. And then one day it finally did. So in April 2014, we found out, and we were just so ecstatic. Pregnancy was going along as normal. I was journaling all of my symptoms and everything. Then in August, when I was 19 weeks pregnant, I started to feel some pressure. So every time I would get out of bed or out of a chair, it would take me a while to straighten because of how intense the pressure was. It was like a lower abdominal pressure. It felt really heavy, and I had to like wait a little bit before I was okay to walk. So I was on the phone with my mom, and she was like, you know, you're pregnant. If something is hurting, you need to go to the doctor and get them to check you out. Nothing should be hurting you. And so I didn't want to be one of those pregnant women who was calling for every little thing and bugging the doctor's office, and that was the wrong mindset back then. I think totally different now. If I feel a twinge that's not the usual, then I will go and trust my body. But you know, seeing as how I had never gotten that far in my pregnancy before, I didn't know. So it was God that compelled me to listen to my mom, because usually I'm like, oh, she's just being a worrywart. I don't need to listen to her. But I listened, I obeyed, and I went. And it was a good thing that I went, because when I went to the doctors, I had a morning appointment and then an afternoon ultrasound. In the morning, they checked my cervix with the speculum exam, and it appeared closed. When I came back in the afternoon for my ultrasound, my cervix was dilated. I was 3 centimeters dilated and completely effaced, and there was nothing there. So they immediately admitted me to the hospital. We went to the hospital. I stayed in labor and delivery overnight because they just didn't know what was going to happen. I was given the option to pretty much end my pregnancy. An MFM came in and was like, well, chances are slim. If your baby is born now, his eyes are going to be fused shut. We're not going to be able to help him. So basically, he gave me the option of aborting my baby, or waiting. So of course I chose to wait and see no matter what. So we decided to go the wait and see option. I waited in the hospital for 9 days. I was in bed. I didn't move from the bed for 9 days. I was in something called Trendelenburg position. I forgot to tell you guys that that first night when I was in labor and delivery, I was leaking. And so they informed me at the time that I had a leak in my amniotic fluid in my sac, and also that the sac, the membranes were bulging. So like when they did an exam, the doctor did an exam with her hand and checked my cervix, and she said she could feel the sac. So it was that bad. And later on that night, I had something like leaking a lot more, like kind of a gush. So I called a nurse in, and when she checked me, she like pulled up this like really slimy substance. I don't know what it was. It was really like, it was thick and yellow and slimy. I'm sorry if this is TMI. In retrospect, I was like, oh my gosh, that was my mucus plug probably. So I had lost my mucus plug that first night. In any case, I stayed in bed. They took me up to the high-risk floor. I stayed at the hospital for 9 days in Trendelenburg position, T-Berg, and I didn't move. I did number 1 in my bed, in a bedpan, of course. Number 2 in my bed. My hubby gave me sponge baths in my bed, and I was committed to giving the baby the best chance that I could. But on August 7, 2014, I had what's known as a bloody show, and my contractions began to come back to back, and they determined that it was time to deliver the baby and that the baby was coming. They wheeled me out of my room on the high-risk floor, took me back to labor and delivery, and I had to give birth. I remember that there was a point in time where they were hooking me up and giving me medication for the pain, because the contractions were really painful. It was like period pains times 100. And then there was a point in time where the nurse was like, oh, you know what, let me get you something to vomit in case you start to feel nauseous. And it was like she said the magic word or something, because as soon as she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to throw up. And so she was rushing, and she got a bag. She handed it to my hubby. I was in the bed and he was on this side, my left side. And I just turned over as soon as he got the bag, and I just hurled into the bag. And at that moment, I heard a pop. And that was my baby descending. His feet were already out, and I just had to keep pushing to get the rest of his body out. After that, my doctor was amazing. She was like, you know what, I don't want you to have a D&C, so let's try to get everything out. Let's try to get the placenta out. And she did some maneuvering when I couldn't push it out. She did some maneuvering that I'm not going to explain on camera because it's kind of gross. It was a pill basically, and she used it and put it somewhere. Use your imagination. And she helped me push my placenta out so that I didn't have to have a D&C. We spent some time with him that night until his heart stopped beating. and we had to let him go. Before I left the room, I just remember thinking, I can't leave my baby here. So I was in the wheelchair and they wheeled me back to him, and I held him and I just sobbed. I just sobbed because I was leaving my baby, and I know he was no longer with us. You know, he'd already gone on to be with the Lord. But I just felt like, oh my gosh, you know, when he was first born, I was kind of scared to hold him. I was scared of what I was going to feel because I let him down, and not being able to keep him. And they told me that, you know what, he needs you right now. You're the best person for him right now to keep him warm and hold him close. And as soon as they said that, it's like my maternal instinct kicked in. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I held him, and he was moving, and he was so small, and you know, his skin wasn't, you know, opaque yet. It was still a little transparent. He was just so tiny, and I held him, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, he's so warm. So hubby held him. We took some video, we took pictures, and we spent time with him. We prayed over his body. We dedicated him to the Lord. We asked God to take him, and yeah, that was that. And then I remember when I was being wheeled out after holding him, he was so cold. He was like a block of ice. And at that moment I realized, from a real, just I guess hands-on perspective, how the difference between life and death. You know, it's cold. Death is cold. And yeah, that's how we lost our baby boy. It was 20 weeks and 2 days. And we were devastated for a very long time. We still are. I still mourn him. And it's something that I realize I'll never get over. Ever. After I had healed up and everything, we continued to try. Once again, we conceived on October 20th, and it was probably due to the fact that I was even more fertile because I had just given birth. Because like I said, I told you guys we tried for 2 years before we got pregnant the second time. And so we tried again, we kept trying, and on November 1st, my period was supposed to come. It didn't show up, and I'm usually on time. I had 2 cycles in between losing our baby and then, so we went to the Dollar Tree and we got 2 pregnancy tests because we didn't want to go out and splurge on an expensive test, and I ended up not being pregnant. So I was like, you know what, if I am pregnant, those cheap tests will pick it up. We got 2 tests. On November 1st, 2014, we tested, and it was positive. It was a very faint positive. We tested again on November 2nd, that Sunday, 2014, and it was positive again. It was dark this time. So we were pregnant. Our reaction was, we weren't like super duper like jumping around, but we were so overjoyed and kind of in shock. The second time we got pregnant, we were still excited, but we waited until second trimester had passed before we told our family and friends. We had just started to tell a couple close friends. But this time around, we kept it to ourselves. And there's some other reasons that I'll explain later why we kept it to ourselves, but one of the reasons was that we just wanted to wait it out and see what was going to happen, see what God was going to do. So today I am 20 weeks and 5 days. We still have not told anyone, so I decided to post these vlogs to share with friends and family and all of you guys out there in Cyberland how the story unfolded. Like I said, I had recorded everything I was feeling. I really didn't start getting sick until 8 weeks. I had recorded everything up until like 8 or 9 weeks, and I lost it. Our drive just completely just deleted everything. Our drive is like null and void. We had saved the stuff on the computer on the backup drive, and it's all gone. So I'm having to try to recall and tell you guys what happened, so hopefully you don't mind. We were pregnant again. So naturally I was worried about my cervix. So I had started researching since we lost the baby. I had started researching. I joined abbyloopers.net. I researched about the TAC extensively. I knew that I wanted the TAC, and I did not want the TVC or the transvaginal cerclage. I didn't want to risk losing my baby. I didn't want a premature baby, and I didn't want to be on bed rest my entire pregnancy, worried sick. So I knew that the transabdominal cerclage was the way for me and my hubby and our family to go. We both agreed. So we started to look into doctors. The first doctor I talked to was Dr. Haney in Chicago. He was so nice. He put us at ease and he was like, yep, you're definitely a candidate. Second, I spoke to Dr. James Sumners in Indianapolis. And again, he was really nice and he just was matter of fact and told us everything that we needed to know. I really wanted to talk to Dr. Davis. Well, he was in New Jersey, but now he's in Tennessee. I had been trying to reach him for the longest. I just kept calling the office, leaving messages. And then finally, when I got pregnant, I called the office. I was like, I'm pregnant. I would like to talk to him. So we talked one evening, and then he kind of told us everything. He helped us out with the insurance side of things. And our job was to get our insurance company to approve the procedure. I had appealed for the transabdominal cerclage pre-pregnancy after I spoke to Dr. Haney, and I was denied. I don't know why, but I was denied pre-pregnancy. So after that, I was kind of scared. Okay, well, I was hoping that because I'm pregnant, it would be different. And it was. We were approved. So what I did was I spoke to my primary care physician because we have an HMO. She approved, me getting the TAC. And so I had to work with the referral representative at the office, at my PCP's office. And I submitted an appeal letter to Humana, my insurance company. I submitted some studies. I also submitted a diagram that Dr. Davis drew. So in the letter I submitted to Humana, I made sure I emphasized what a cost savings it would be for Humana if I was able to carry a baby to term, as opposed to having the TVC and possibly giving birth to a premature baby who would be in the NICU, costing them millions and millions of dollars. I credit being approved, obviously, to God, because without his favor, it wouldn't have happened. But I was also diligent in researching, putting a letter together, attaching studies that were done, comparing the TVC to the TAC, and the diagram, and just, being proactive about things. We found out we were approved to receive the transabdominal cerclage a week before I was scheduled for my appointment with Dr. Davis, because Dr. Davis was throwing around dates and he was like, I could probably do it around December 19th for you because you'll be 10 weeks. The thing is, he's only in the office twice a month. So I had to catch him, and he was in the office during my 10th week. He was on vacation the week after. We were just really, really scared. Our backup plan was, if we couldn't get him to do it, that we would end up switching insurance companies and going with Dr. Sumner's in Indianapolis. But we would have to wait a certain amount of time to switch our insurance. And by the time we were able to schedule with Dr. Sumner's, I would be like almost 14 weeks. And we didn't want to wait that long. We prayed and prayed about it. I sought God about it, and we got approved. We rented a minivan. We drove up to Johnson City, Tennessee. It was like 10 plus hours because we live in Florida. We did the pre-op visit on December 18th. Dr. Davis was so nice. He made me feel so comfortable. And then on the 19th, I had the surgery. Again, Dr. Davis was amazing. I had this piece of footage of when I was being wheeled to the OR, the operating room. He was there with me, and he stood in the hall watching them wheel me in. And I mean, most surgeons would probably already be in the OR just waiting for the patient. But Dr. Davis was walking with me. He rubbed my shoulder and said everything was going to be okay. The anesthesiologist put a mask over my face, and they were injecting me with the medicine, the anesthesia. And all I remember was Dr. Davis telling jokes, people laughing, and then I was knocked out. When I woke up with a really sore tummy. And I kept saying, my tummy hurts, my tummy hurts. I don't know why I was calling it my tummy like a 6-year-old, but yeah, okay. So they're like, well, you just had surgery, so your tummy's gonna hurt. And then I snapped out of it, and I realized, oh my gosh, I made it. I'm out of surgery. I woke up from the anesthesia. It was like the best feeling in the world, because I was laying there just like, oh my gosh, I have the TAC's inside of me. So we were there for one night and then a half day. We left the next day. If you guys want a separate video on my experience in the hospital, I can do it and try to recall some things. But basically, that's how I ended up getting the transabdominal cerclage. At the beginning of my research, I was like, man, we're probably never going to be able to get this procedure. But God moved, and God worked out a way. And I'm here today at 20 weeks and 5 days with the transabdominal cerclage. And it's funny because every time I go to my obstetrician's office, the sonographer is just amazed at how high up the band is that they put around your cervix. And Dr. Davis said that to me. He was like, the next day when he came to see me after the surgery, he was like, you know, they'll be pretty surprised at how high up that cerclage is. And he was right. Another thing that he's often quoted saying is, and what he said to me is that when asked like, how often do you have to check the cervix throughout the pregnancy, he was like, never. But nobody ever believes me. And you know, I went to the doctor today and it was still closed, and I was like, you know what, he's making me a believer. I don't think you ever have to check this thing. Obviously I'm still gonna get checked out, but he's really serious about it. The staff there, he had a resident assistant help him. She was awesome. She came in the next morning, showed us the baby. Like, we looked at the baby with this little ultrasound machine, and the baby was moving around all crazy, and it was just an amazing experience. The drive back home was really rough because I had just had surgery, but when we got home, I just praised God. I was, God, thank you. We're home. I have the transabdominal cerclage. My baby has the best shot. Not that anything is foolproof, but my baby has the best shot. That's kind of what happened in a nutshell from the beginning of the pregnancy till now. Obviously, my vlogs included how I was feeling from week to week, but I lost all of that. But I didn't start getting sick until around week 8. And then, you know, I started getting the typical pregnancy symptoms. So the vlogs that you guys are going to see are everything from after the surgery until this point. And I really pray that this channel encourages you. If you have an incompetent cervix, know that you're not alone. There's a lot of information out there. You can start with some Facebook groups about it. There are tons of support groups and blogs online. Abby Loopers is the site where I found a lot of information that was kind of all compiled in one place that made it easy to find. I will link some sites down below for you guys. And also, there was one lady that I watched on YouTube when I was looking for all of this stuff, and she was the only one that really was transparent and posted about the transabdominal cerclage, and her name is Mona Hines, and her channel is called 40 Weeks to Go. Hey Mona, by this time I've already contacted you and let you know how much you inspired me and encouraged me when I was down, because I was in my feelings. And the thing about losing a baby at 5 months is that it's devastating, because for 5 months my husband and I, we had planned, and everything changed, and we were waiting for this baby. And to lose your baby, it's like just everything around you, just you black everything out. And I was depressed a little bit, and my closest friends and families didn't really understand. They had no clue, you know, how hard. They didn't know what to tell me. I just felt like no one really understood. And I watched your video, all of your videos, Mona, and I felt like you understood, and you were talking to me, and we were friends. And so thank you for that.